What's happening, guys? This is Brian916. As always, thanks for tuning in and welcome back to the channel. So in this particular video, guys, I'm going to be discussing Harbor Freight and how I got sort of turned off to Harbor Freight as a whole, and how I really don't see myself shopping at Harbor Freight anymore. So, you know, it's funny, I see a lot of guys refer to Harbor Freight as China Freight. And I used to say to myself, like, that's not really a fair shake. Some of the stuff is made in Taiwan. It is an American-based company, and they do employ, you know, American people all over the United States. And I used to, you know, sort of take that stand. But recently, it has been feeling like China Freight. And not because of where the tools is manufactured, but their business model. There's a $1 billion industry in China of just knockoff goods. And it seems like Harbor Freight has kind of taken that same sort of Chinese business model of just knocking off everyone's products and selling them. And so in that way, it is kind of like China Freight. They sort of, you know, took a Chinese business model and applied it here in the United States. And so for that reason, I've been kind of turned off. You know, I've always sort of not necessarily liked how they copy Snap-on so much, but it's not really Snap-on. They're sort of knocking off a lot of different companies. If you look at their flyers, they sort of compare their products and tools to another company. But really, it's not a comparison. It's more of a knockoff because those tools look identical to who they're comparing it to. So, you know, I was on board with Harbor Freight when they first put out better jack stands. I'm gonna run a clip of some of the things that I mentioned about Harbor Freight as far back as 2 years, so you guys can see that this is not something that I just sort of woke up and felt this way. This is something that's sort of been building up. But I was giving Harbor Freight a chance because they were trying to improve upon the products that they already had. The US General tool boxes, the US General tool carts with all the different colors, all the different features or kinks that they sort of worked out in the toolboxes and tool carts, the jacks, the jack stands. These were products that they already had. Now, when they put the Daytona jack out, I did kind of feel like they were copying Snap-on, but in Harbor Freight's defense, I felt like they were already selling tons of Pittsburgh's jacks. So I'm pretty sure they were outselling Snap-on when it came to jacks and jack stands anyway. So I didn't really pay that too much attention. I know when they did come out with the Pittsburgh Pro Ratchet, I did feel like that was sort of a Snap-on ripoff, and that's where it sort of started with me, where I was kind of, you know, taken back a little bit because no other tool company is doing this, okay? No other tool company is completely ripping off other tool brands and getting away with it. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily like new technology that comes out and that sort of becomes the normal, because Snap-on has ratcheting wrenches. We all know GEARWRENCH, you know, engineered that. Snap-on created the Flank Drive and the Flank Drive Plus. Other tool companies sort of use that. Same thing with lithium-ion batteries. That was sort of like a Milwaukee invention, and then everyone is using it. So I'm not necessarily talking about you know, as tools, you know, progress with time and that becomes the new norm. I'm talking about flat out just a knockoff of a tool. No other company does that. Tekton doesn't do that. GEARWRENCH doesn't do that. SK doesn't do that. Right Tool doesn't do that. Craftsman doesn't do that. Cobalt doesn't do that. Husky doesn't do that. All these companies have their own tools and they don't knock off anyone else's tools. And so I've been kind of turned off by it, and I noticed it just sort of just going and going and going. Even with the icon stuff, I don't know if you guys know this, but even the name Icon comes from Snap-on. They didn't come up with that name. there's actually a toolbox called the Icon Series Toolbox by Snap-on. So look that up if you're not familiar. As a business owner, and all you guys out there who are business owners or maybe self-employed, you could sort of put yourself in the shoes of Snap-on. Just for a minute, think about it from Snap-on's perspective, or any other tool companies that's being bootlegged, if you will. Look at it from their perspective. Let's say you own a restaurant, and let's just say your logo is a golden arch, and the name of your restaurant is McDonald's, and your restaurant is popular and everyone comes and eats at your restaurant. Then another restaurant pops up and they are not McDonald's, they're McDowell's, okay? And they have, instead of the rounded M arch, maybe they have sharp point M arch, but it looks like yours, the same color. They serve sort of the same menu that you serve, and they sort of just price it a little bit cheaper. How would you feel? You know, Snap-on took them to court, so you know that shows you how they felt. So I give Snap-on a hard time, but I've never seen Snap-on go after Harbor Freight, or I've never seen Snap-on like put down any other companies or try to steal clientele or anything like that from any other companies. And they're not bootlegging and knocking off other people's products. So for the most part, you know, I don't really have anything against Snap-on, other than the fact that their tools are up there, you know. And another thing that I wanted to mention, I really don't think the Icon tool line is gonna do well. I really don't. I just don't see it doing too well, because Snap-on is like, or excuse me, Harbor Freight is like a synonym with inexpensive. No one's gonna wanna open up credit to pay off an Icon toolbox. They haven't been in the game long enough to build that brand up to be able to justify that cost. Just copying another person's model and passing it off as, you know, the same as that other company, that's not what we have here. Snap-on has been in business for a really long time and has built up their brand to way up here, okay? This is a long progressive thing that Snap-on has done to get their brand, their logo, to the top of the food chain, so they could ask those kind of prices. But for Icon to just come along and it just sort of ask for those high prices, and really there's like really no backstory, or there was really no build up to sort of justify that cost, I really don't see it doing too well. And let's be honest, whenever you finance something, if you mortgage a home or you finance a car, anything you finance, typically it's something that you really want, and you're willing to make payments on that because this is something that you really want, your dream car, your dream house, or something, a necessity maybe. But it's never an inferior product or a knockoff product that you would finance for the most part. So let's be honest, if you are going to finance a toolbox, you're going to finance a Snap-on toolbox. Why would you finance an Icon toolbox? I mean, let's just be honest. And if you don't want to really spend that type of money, you know, you're going to buy a Husky box or US General box or something like that. But I really don't see anybody financing an Icon toolbox. Another important point that I want to make, guys, is this is something that's sort of been brewing in me for a while. This is not like an overnight thing with me. This has sort of been catching my attention for a while. And I'll show some clips right now just to sort of prove you guys that I've always felt like some of this stuff was a knockoff. So some of these clips are as far as 2 years back, so we'll run them real quick. So, I bought other ones before from Harbor Freight, you know, knowing that they're disposable, just to get me by. And so I was expecting this to be the same thing, but this thing still works and it's been working good. So I think I got a good one. Obviously, I don't support or endorse or vouch for every last tool inside Harbor Freight. That's ridiculous. I know better than that. So now I kind of wanted to get into some of the things I kind of don't like. They look pretty similar in design. So you see the influence that Harbor Freight has is from Snap-on, and they sort of copy Snap-on's design in a lot of tools. This is this ratchet, which is basically the same as this ratchet, but a 3/8. It's a Pittsburgh. It's like a straight Snap-on ripoff. Wanted to mention that Harbor Freight has been trying to improve their quality. There was a point in time where you couldn't pay me to go in there, but they've improved their quality so much, and this is just a testament. Look at the difference in design in these jack stands. Okay, this one was a fail. This was supposed to be for the pinch weld. However, the pinch weld would never get in there. You'd end up hitting like the floorboard of the vehicle or something else, but you would never hit the actual pinch weld. And these were somewhat dangerous to use. You could cause damage. I'd have to always find somewhere on the frame or subframe for it, and would never use this for the pinch weld because it wouldn't actually contact the pinch weld. But then they redesigned it with this guy, and you can see the pinch weld fit on there nice and easy. So they have been trying to make some improvements to their product. So as you can see, guys, I've always sort of had the opinion that, you know, it's sort of a ripoff, a Snap-on. But I did like the fact that they were trying to improve on the stuff that they did have. That's why I like Tekton so much. Tekton has improved drastically on some of their stuff. The pry bars used to be junk. Now the pry bars are solid. Their ratchets used to be just complete trash. Now their ratchets are better. I mean, I really like to see when products get improved on. But with Harbor Freight, I noticed that a lot of people sort of take the improvement of some of their products, like the Earthquake line and the Pittsburgh Pro or the Icon stuff. They sort of take it as if it's an exceptional product. It's not exceptional, it's acceptable. Big difference. It's not exceptional, it's acceptable. All Harbor Freight really did, in my opinion, is make their tools sort of on par with everyone else that has a reputable brand. For example, you know, Snap-on or Milwaukee or DeWalt or some of these other companies, maybe Channel Lock and GEARWRENCH and things like that. All they did was bring their tools up to an acceptable level. I don't really see anything that they have as exceptional, in my opinion. So that's kind of where I am at this point with Harbor Freight. I really don't think I'm going to be shopping at Harbor Freight anymore. I think I'm going to, you know, spend my money elsewhere. For all of those who think that this has anything to do with the recent Icon launch and all the free products that they gave, I get offered free products at least twice a month that I turn down because I don't need to just accumulate a bunch of junk that I don't need, and I don't want to be pushing products on my subscribers, stuff they don't need. Only time I do a tool review is genuine. I don't really just push a product because someone asked me to. Typically, I'll push a product because I think it's a good product and there's a reason behind why I sort of do the review on it. Or if it's just a product that I wanted, I would just flat out tell the subscriber, hey, I'm only doing this review because I wanted this product. But for the most part, I get offered free stuff at least twice a month that I turn down. So it has nothing to do with receiving anything free for those of you who might be thinking in that direction. As you guys know, I do have some Harbor Freight tools. I'll show you real quick some of the Harbor Freight stuff that I have. So here's my hand tools that I have from Harbor Freight. If you look at the left of your screen, you can see the two power tools that I have from the Earthquake line. I actually do have a grinder as well because I already had a battery for that Earthquake, and it just made sense since I already have a battery and charger, and I wanted a cordless grinder to just pick up that Harbor Freight one. And then I have my electric ratchet just below it. And then to the right of the electric ratchet, you see that's the new icon, which is a lot like the Pittsburgh Pro, really. In my opinion, it's not much difference. It's just 90 teeth instead of 72 teeth, which does make a difference. And then to the right of that, you see the Doyle pliers. I got the mini pliers. Those are pretty decent pliers. I got some impact sockets in the back. Just below the impact sockets, we got some icon sockets right there. And below the icon sockets, I have some Pittsburgh Allen sockets. Then I have 2 Pittsburgh ratchets below that. Pittsburgh breaker bar. And that's a serpentine belt tool up front there with 3 sockets and 3 crow's feet. And we got our high visibility picks in between the padded sockets and that 1/4-inch drive air ratchet. And then of course I got my brown work light. I got some stubby ratcheting wrenches that's offset, and that's from the new Icon line. So and then of course the padded sockets. All of this stuff is the hand tools that I use from Harbor Freight. Now all of these hand tools work. I'm not saying these hand tools don't work. I've had those impact sockets for about 5 years and they worked well. My problem is not with the quality necessarily. My problem more or less is the knockoff stuff. The basically copying other tool companies and then sort of going after other tool companies with essentially their own copied products, which is weird. So, I mean, these tools work, don't get me wrong. And around this point in time, you know, Harbor Freight was really improving on the Pittsburgh stuff, and they were really improving on the U.S. General stuff. And I thought that they were stepping up their brand, but really it just sort of morphed into this thing where they just turned into like a Chinese knockoff company where they just imitate everyone. And that's really my biggest gripe with Harbor Freight and why I'm choosing not to necessarily buy Harbor Freight stuff anymore. One more thing too, I also do have a coolant pressure tester, which really, it works really good, by the way, which I bought in a jam from Harbor Freight, and really only needed one adapter to get a Honda diagnosed. But it worked well. I was able to diagnose the source of the leak. I believe it was a blown head gasket. I was able to see coolant coming into cylinder 2. You know, after I pumped up pressure into the coolant system, took the spark plug out and put a inspection camera down in the cylinder, and I was able to see coolant starting to fill up inside the cylinder. So speaking of that Harbor Freight coolant pressure tester, I bought that thing a while back, and I was able to diagnose a cracked cylinder head on this 2006 Chevy Malibu you see here in this picture. So the tool has served me well. This is back in like 2012. I swapped this engine for a customer after I diagnosed a cracked cylinder head using that Harbor Freight tool. And I used to use this tool as an advertisement for engine swaps. And if you take a look at this video clip here, you can see the black Harbor Freight coolant pressure tester right there on the expansion tank where I'm pressurizing the coolant system. And this is some video that I took back of that Chevy Malibu showing the customer exactly what I found. And so I pumped up about 13 or 14 pounds of pressure and was able to find a crack right here in this cylinder head. So I have used the quite a few of Harbor Freight's tools professionally, and they worked for me, and I didn't necessarily have a problem using the Harbor Freight tools. So that's really not the purpose. And ever since then, I just kept using that coolant pressure tester, and it's never let me down in its work. So as far as whether or not Harbor Freight tools work, they've always worked for me. Again, that's not necessarily my gripe. My gripe with Harbor Freight is enough's enough. When are you going to stop knocking off everybody else's tools and sort of create your own lane, create your own brand, sort of like all the other major players that I've talked about: Tekton, GEARWRENCH, Husky, Cobalt, Craftsman, DeWalt, Milwaukee. The list goes on of these other tool companies that have their own tools and their own style, and are not necessarily just bootlegging everyone. So you guys can see there, I do have Harbor Freight products, and there was a point in time where I really was trying to give Harbor Freight a try, because like I stated earlier, I thought that they really were trying to improve on Pittsburgh, on US General, on some of the products that they already had. But to just scrap Pittsburgh Pro altogether and just enter a whole new line of tools, and this line of tools is just sort of the same knockoff as Pittsburgh Pro. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and I just prefer to you know, if I'm gonna buy tools at the affordable range, I'm gonna stick with Tekton or some of the big box stores like Lowe's and Home Depot, the Cobalt, Craftsman, Husky, and stuff like that. GEARWRENCH is really good too. I'll probably just stick with my usual Tekton for my hand tools. Speaking of Tekton, if any of you guys are going out to Las Vegas to SEMA this year, head over to the Tekton tool booth. The booth is 50011. They told me they're gonna run some video clips of some of my videos and my logo over there. So if you guys over there, check it out. I'd appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, that's it. That's where I am. That's where I stand with Harbor Freight. It's just the person I am. I just can't really get behind a tool company that's ripping off and everyone else's tool designs and copying and bootlegging everybody else's stuff. I mean, for Harbor Freight to go after Snap-on with the same products that they're copying from Snap-on and then go after them, I just don't understand that. So, you know, I'm good on Harbor Freight. Anyway, guys, this is Brian 916. Thanks for tuning in. See you on the next.